Welcome to our coaching session about mortgage podcasting. This is Kelly Yale from Intent Modern Mortgage Marketing. And today we are going to be going over exactly why podcasting is probably going to be an important step in your marketing efforts, and then give you an overview of some of the steps you need to take in order to start being very serious about your endeavor. So today we are going to go over why to podcast, tips to creating your own podcast, and then some popular podcasts for mortgage professionals that we think that you should be tuning into. While you may not listen to podcasts, a lot of people do. 32% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly, and 22% of Americans listen to podcasts weekly. Now, there is definitely conversation about the way that people do this, especially in 2020 when everyone was sort of staying home and things like that. You had a lot of people who were conditioned to listening to podcasts while they drove without having commute times. People have been doing more stuff in their home while they're exercising, while they're walking. So it's definitely part of many people's weekly and daily habits. Podcast listeners are part of the most affluent segment in America. The US is roughly 29% of households earn $75,000 per year or more, and 41% of that group are podcast listeners. So that's definitely the kind of people who you would like to grab the attention of. More than half of podcast consumers listen while they're doing other things, which is one of the reasons why they've gained so much popularity. So if you think about when you are taking your dog for a walk or when you are doing household chores, instead of listening to music, people are trying to tune in to, educate themselves, to learn something new, to be entertained. So, if you're thinking about making this part of your strategy for 2021, we think that that is an amazing idea. Just remember, you may not get specific bang for your buck. While you want to look like an industry leader and an insider and someone that people can trust, that may not actually equate to direct loans from your area. Now, if you want to do something like that, you're going to have to be smart about how you name it. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But there are going to be great opportunities that come from people not only in the industry, or your real estate partners is a fantastic idea to put something together for them, but truly you're going to be able to see the benefits of sharing your experience, your vision, things like that. Obviously, we want you to be credible. Being credible is one of the best ways to make sure that people can trust you right off the bat, right? And you are a professional, you know what you're doing, you have credibility sort of built into what you do because you are shepherding people through the largest financial transaction they're likely to make. So you can tell some stories about different things that you have accomplished in your career, but also give background as to why you do what you do. Referrals, podcasts often show up in Google search as results. So agents can market, so agents in other markets can find you. So when you're searching out, so let's say someone's looking for like a new mortgage lender in your area, if you are tagging that podcast correctly, naming them correctly, that does come up in searches. Networking. This is probably the number one best part, in my opinion, about what you can do with this. So you say to one of your best agents or one of the agents that you'd really like to work with, you're so successful in the area. I'd really love to take the opportunity to get you on my podcast. Would you mind, showing up for an interview? It is a strange thing, the way that we all love to be interviewed on something. So that is definitely one of the things I would look into doing. And last but not least, you can absolutely sponsor other local podcasts in your market. Uh, Establish kind of relationships or episode sponsorship. It's a really small investment, and you can reach thousands of other people in your area. So if you have a real estate agent who happens to be in your neck of the woods, maybe you do or don't work with them yet, if they have a podcast, you can ask them if you can be one of the advertisers for their podcast. There's so many ways that you can really get in front of different groups of people. So you really want to start a podcast. That's amazing. Let's give you some tips on how you can do it. Now, I am going to be very honest with you. I'm going to give you about 6 directions, because I think that that is as much as the human brain can kind of take in when it starts thinking about a project that is this large, because it really is this large. Unlike building a website, where you outsource that, or unlike many, many other marketing opportunities, this is going to be dependent on you to be ready, to be scheduled, and to adhere to it. So it is definitely a large mountain, but it's a climbable one. And I want to show you how you can do that. And then I'm going to show you where you can go to find all kinds of information. The first thing you're going to have to do is think of a name. And you can make that local, which is what I would do. I would be like, Kansas City, Kansas City home buying, something to that effect. I mean, obviously that's not a clever name, but I just came up with it. But I also came up with Home Lending Sense. And so you will have to think of a name for your podcast. So that's kind of the first foray into that. And then you're going to have to think of some topics. Now, if you are one of our wonderful customers, then you know that every week we come up with 2 or 3 ideas for you. We blog about those. Those are your video prompts. They can also be your podcast prompts. There are lots of things that you can talk about, right? Obviously, we're in 2021. We're still going through, COVID and vaccines and, lockdowns in certain states. And so you can speak to that and what impact that's having on the housing market. You can talk about local market reports. You can do interviews with industry experts and your business partners. So think about everybody, any referral partner, from CPAs to financial advisors, so many people. And then if you have somebody who mentored you or somebody who you admire, why not ask them if they would come over to your podcast? Discuss local events, news, and trends. Really important, right? So if you're seeing pockets of growth, if you had a new neighborhood that was going up, but during COVID lumber was too expensive and that neighborhood stopped, cover that. Talk about that. Tag those people in what you're talking about. Talk about niche markets such as first-time home buyers, VA buyers. If you were smart, and I know I say this all the time, but I love niche marketing, especially because you can make yourself sort of an expert at something. So let's say that you're a woman and you want to do a podcast that is for divorced women looking to buy their first home, right? So that's something that at least like single and ready to buy a house or whatever that is. And then home search and purchase tips. You have so much information in your brain, and there's a lot of stuff that people would really like to know, because for many people, the idea of buying a home is so permanent and it makes them have anxiety, and they're not really sure if they're going to make the right decision. They don't want somebody going through their financials. And all you can do to make them feel better is just to really explain to them what that situation looks like. Walk them through, let them know that there's nothing to be nervous about. You can also choose your format. Now, you don't have to be stuck with this, but I do want you to kind of pay attention. You can do interview, so you can have somebody on, you can be asking them questions. You can do monologue, which is just you talking. Multiple hosts, if you have somebody really colorful and clever who you'd like to have on there with you, that would be fun. And then narrative, but that's more like audiobook style. So it's however you want to show up. But I think most of what you'll be doing is interview and monologue style. Make a calendar. Now, this says create a 6-month plan for your podcast. And that's actually really what you want to do, at least 3 months. And then you want to give yourself sort of a weekly idea of topics and guests, and then plan for those things to happen. Once a week is a lot of commitment. And I know you think it's not, and I don't think it is, but it is. So consider maybe bi-weekly, every 2 Thursdays, I'm going to pour myself a glass of wine and do, wine down with mortgages. And that's a great plan for you. But planning ahead is also going to allow you to make sure that you are asking your guests in plenty of time for them to have the ability to think through what they want to say and make a plan so they can show up to your podcast. Gather equipment. This is a big topic, but we're going to take it the easiest possible way, because all you really need to do is have a computer and a microphone and recording software. There's many, many options for the accessories. I went to an entire podcasting seminar where they went through every piece of equipment that they think is best. It is overwhelming, but you do need a good microphone, and that's what we're going to start with. If you go over to Amazon, they have plenty, but one of the ones that gets the best feedback is the Samsung Technologies Q2U. And so if you can just take a look at that, and obviously it's on sale right now, but that may not be when you look at it. But this is supposed to be one of the best microphones that you can get for your podcasting, and it's only $70. Then you're going to need to find a hosting location, right? So just like a website, you need to have your podcast hosted somewhere. Once you record it, podcast will be uploaded to one of several platforms. They are free. There's SoundCloud, there's Buzzsprouts, and there's Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services, they're all great. So you can choose and pick which one best suits your needs. If you're nervous about how you sounded or you want to think about the sound quality, you can also go over to a website called Audacity. And when you're over, it could be Audacity. No, I think it's Audacity. Um, you just go here. It's a free open source software that you can put right on your computer. If you're using a Mac, you can use GarageBand. So just check and see if your computer actually offers you any editing software. For me, I'm just the kind of person where I know people make mistakes. I don't get really hyper about it when I'm listening to somebody and they make a mistake. So it's not a huge deal if you don't sound perfect every time. In fact, I wouldn't even listen to your podcast if I were you. So just record it and send it on its merry way, because otherwise we just nitpick at ourselves and think about things we could have done better. And then you can publish it. So you can publish it across iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Podchaser, TuneIn. Obviously, the big players on there would be Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Having stuff on there is going to be really awesome. And then you can put that messaging out to people, like you started this new podcast, allow them to follow you on Spotify or download your podcast. The more you talk about it, everything comes down to the same basic concept in marketing, right? How do you introduce yourself to people, right? Or how do you engage people? So your entire database, your sphere of influence, everyone around you is somebody who could be listening to this. We have to let them know where to find it. There is, in my humble opinion, a absolutely quintessential guide to all of this. The podcast host does a how to start a podcast, every single step for 2021. And this article is very long. It's incredibly detailed. And there is almost no way you can be successful if you go through all those steps. I could never in a million years tell you all these steps. It is a very, very, very intuitive and intense dive into every single thing you would need to know. So if you can just remember the podcast host, and this is planning how to start a podcast. Colin Gray does a tremendous job of really telling people what they can do in order to be successful with this. You can have every opportunity to learn from the best as well. We talked about leveraging your peers and mentors and coaches in interview style, but also remember there are so many resources for you. Some of our favorites are the Mortgage Business Podcast, I Love Mortgage Brokering, the Mortgage Banker University, and Listen Money Matters. So if you have the opportunity to listen to one of those, I think you'll get a good feel for what really works, what doesn't, what engages you, what doesn't. So that's a really good for you to start following. We are going to do, as we start our podcast, I'm going to sort of live do it in a training so that we can show you how we did it, because we are right on the precipice of doing exactly this. So keep your eye on the intentmarketing.com website under videos. You can stay with us and check out what we're going to do with our podcast. We'd like to be a resource for you, and we always have more stuff over there for you. Last but not least, we're going to take your questions. We're going to thank you for coming today. We are going to remind you that we are all over the internet on all of our social media platforms, and we would love to have a conversation with you. These are not sales tools that we do every day, but instead, we like to believe that coaching people up to be as strong as they can in marketing is really the best idea for all of us. So I'm going to take your questions at this time. Thank you so much for coming. If you need to hop off the call, and we're going to get to those questions. Well, we don't have any questions today, so I hope you're going to have a great time in your podcasting efforts. Let us know how you do and let us know where to follow you.